Namo, Amitābha Buddha. Good evening, dear friends. Have you ever noticed how the night can feel so quiet, and yet your mind refuses to rest? Your body is tired. The room is dark. The world has slowed down. But inside, thoughts keep moving. Worries about health, about money, about family, about tomorrow. You lie there staring into the darkness, wondering why sleep feels so far away. For many people living busy lives in America, this kind of night has become very familiar. We work hard. We carry responsibilities. We try to stay strong. But when the day finally ends, the heart does not know how to stop holding everything. Tonight, I want to gently remind you of something important. According to the Buddha's teachings, sleeplessness is not a personal failure. It is often a sign that the mind has not yet found a safe place to rest. There is a quiet way to return to calm, a simple, spiritual refuge that helps the heart soften and the mind slow down without forcing, without struggling. If you are willing to listen, let us walk together into this gentle understanding and discover why peace begins not by trying harder, but by learning where to place the mind before sleep. Because the mind has nowhere to rest, the body keeps listening. You may be lying still in bed, blankets pulled up, the room dim and quiet, yet inside there is movement, a tightening in the chest, a shallow breath that never quite finishes, thoughts rising and falling like waves that refuse to calm. Sleep does not stay away because the body is broken. It stays away because the mind is still standing guard. Many people in America know this feeling well. After a long day of work responsibilities and constant decision-making, the lights finally go off. But the heart keeps replaying everything that happened. A comment that felt sharp, a bill that hasn't been paid yet, a medical appointment coming up, a child who seems distant, a parent growing older far away. The mind keeps circling as if it believes that staying alert will somehow keep everything from falling apart. From the Buddha's perspective, this restless night has a very clear reason. When the mind is unsettled, the body cannot truly rest. The body follows the mind the way a shadow follows form. When the mind is tense, the muscles stay tight. When the mind is afraid, the breath becomes shallow. When the mind keeps grasping the nervous system, never receives the message that it is safe to let go. Imagine a small bell hanging in a quiet temple courtyard. When the wind blows hard, the bell rings again and again, sharp and restless. When the air grows still, the bell becomes silent on its own. The bell does not decide to be quiet. Silence happens naturally when the conditions are right. In the same way, sleep is not something we can force. It arrives when the conditions inside are gentle enough to receive it. In Buddhist teaching, suffering does not appear without cause. Restlessness, anxiety, and insomnia are not random punishments. They arise because certain inner habits have been strengthened over time. The mind has learned to stay alert, to worry, to anticipate, to protect. These habits may have once been useful. They helped you survive stressful moments, difficult jobs, uncertain times. But at night, when the body needs softness, these same habits keep running unaware that their work for the day is done. The Buddha described this process as a chain. A sound is heard, a thought appears, a feeling follows, then comes reaction. Over and over, the chain repeats. At night, a single thought can begin it all. What if something goes wrong tomorrow? The body responds instantly. The heart rate shifts. The breath tightens. Another thought follows. I should have handled that differently. The chain continues. Soon the mind is no longer in the present moment. It is traveling through imagined futures and replayed pasts, dragging the body along with it. This is why telling yourself to just relax rarely works. The chain is already moving. The mind is already trained to respond in this way. And when the mind believes it must stay vigilant, it does not easily stand down. There is a story often shared among Buddhist communities here in the West. A woman named Margaret, living in a quiet neighborhood outside Seattle, struggled with sleep for years. Every night, she lay awake, listening to the distant hum of traffic, her thoughts racing. She tried supplements, breathing techniques, strict bedtime routines. Nothing lasted. One evening, she sat quietly and noticed something simple. Even when her body was exhausted, her mind felt like it was still working a late shift. That realization changed how she approached the night. Instead of fighting her thoughts, she began to watch them. She noticed how one worry led to another, how each thought tightened her chest just a little more. This noticing did not fix everything overnight, but something important shifted. The mind began to feel seen rather than attacked. In Buddhist understanding, this gentle noticing is the beginning of freedom. When awareness is present, the chain starts to loosen. The moment you clearly see, this is worry arising. The mind is no longer completely inside the worry. There is a small space. In that space, the body begins to receive a different signal. The Buddha taught that peace does not come from eliminating thoughts, but from understanding their nature. Thoughts are movements. They arise due to conditions and pass when conditions change. At night, when the mind keeps producing worry, it is not because you are weak. It is because the habit energy is strong. This is why compassion is essential here. Harshness only tightens the chain further. When you judge yourself for not sleeping, the mind hears danger. The body stays alert. But when you approach the restless mind the way you would approach a tired child, something softens. The shoulders drop. The breath deepens slightly. The body begins to feel permission to rest, even if sleep has not yet arrived. Picture a lotus pond at dusk. During the day, the water is disturbed by movement, by wind, by passing boats. At night, as activity fades, the surface slowly becomes still. No one commands the water to calm down. Stillness returns because disturbance ends. In the same way, the mind needs fewer disturbances, not more effort. Understanding this truth changes everything. You stop blaming the body for not sleeping. You stop fighting the mind for being active. Instead, you begin to work with causes and conditions. You begin to ask a different question, not, "Why can't I sleep?" but "What is my mind still holding?" When this question is asked gently, without pressure, the answer begins to reveal itself, and once the cause is seen clearly, the path toward rest becomes natural. The mind starts to learn that it does not have to carry everything through the night. There is another way to lay the burdens down. That way does not begin with force. It begins with awareness. And awareness, when nurtured carefully, becomes the doorway through which calm can finally enter. And once you begin to see what the mind is holding, another truth quietly appears. What exhausts us most is not a single worry, but the way the same worries keep returning night after night in slightly different forms. The mind does not simply think once and stop. It circles, it rehearses, it repeats. Like a path worn into the ground by many footsteps, these inner movements become familiar, automatic, almost invisible. You may notice it in small moments. A notification lights up your phone even late at night, and your chest tightens before you've read a word. A memory surfaces while you're brushing your teeth, and your jaw clenches without permission. You lie down, turn off the lamp, and suddenly, the mind opens a drawer of old conversations, future fears, unfinished responsibilities. None of these arrive dramatically. They slip in quietly as if they belong there. This is how exhaustion truly builds. Not through one heavy burden, but through countless small ones carried again and again. In Buddhist teaching, this is often described as habit energy. The mind learns patterns the way the body learns posture. If you spend years leaning forward under pressure, Your back eventually curves that way, even when the pressure is gone. In the same way, if the mind has spent years anticipating danger, solving problems late into the night, or holding responsibility without rest, it continues to do so long after the day has ended. Consider someone like Daniel living just outside Chicago. His days are full. Work meetings, family obligations, caring for aging parents from a distance. On the surface, he manages well. People see him as dependable. But at night, when the house is quiet, his mind starts its second shift. He replays decisions, imagines worst-case scenarios, plans conversations that may never happen. His body lies still, but his inner world keeps moving. One evening, as he sat on the edge of his bed, he noticed something unusual. His shoulders were lifted, almost touching his ears. His hands were clenched, even though there was nothing to hold. This posture had become so familiar that he no longer noticed it during the day. But in the quiet of night, it revealed itself clearly. The body was still bracing as if tomorrow's problems were already at the door. This is how the silent loops work. Thought tightens the body. The body sends a signal back to the mind. The mind reads that signal as urgency. The loop continues. The Buddha taught that nothing arises without conditions. When restlessness appears, it is not because the mind is flawed. It is because the conditions for rest have not yet been fully established. The loops continue because they have been fed over time. Attention feeds them. Reaction strengthens them. Resistance, surprisingly, also keeps them alive. You can see this clearly when you try to force sleep. The harder you try, the more alert you become. The mind interprets effort as importance. Importance signals danger. Danger keeps the system awake. What began as a wish for rest turns into another loop. In Buddhist understanding, this is not a moral failure. It is simply cause and effect. Imagine a spinning wheel. Each time you push it even slightly, it keeps turning. Over time, the pushing becomes unconscious. You no longer remember when it started. You only notice that the wheel never stops. The silent loops of worry and vigilance work the same way. They are pushed by habit, not by choice. This is where many people become discouraged. They think, I understand this, but it keeps happening. And so they turn their frustration inward. But turning against yourself is just another push on the wheel. The Buddha offered a different approach. Instead of fighting the loop, he taught the practice of seeing it clearly. When the loop is seen, not judged, not fed, it begins to lose strength. Awareness changes the quality of the movement. Picture a room with a fan running in the corner. For hours, the sound blends into the background. You barely notice it. But the moment you truly listen, the sound becomes distinct. And when you reach over and turn the fan off, the room doesn't explode into silence. It gently settles. The same is true with inner loops. They do not stop with force. They slow when attention becomes calm and steady. In many Buddhist centers across America, teachers often invite students to observe the mind the way one might watch snow fall through a window. Each thought appears, drifts, dissolves. When you stop chasing each flake, the storm loses its urgency. At night, this practice becomes especially powerful. You may hear the distant sound of a car passing by, or the faint hum of electricity in the walls. These sounds come and go without effort. The body does not need to respond to them. When thoughts are treated the same way, something begins to soften inside. This is not about becoming passive or careless. It is about recognizing that not every thought requires action. Many of the loops that exhaust us are echoes of past responsibilities, not present needs. The mind is replaying old instructions long after the task is complete. In Buddhist language, this is called conditioning. In everyday terms, it means the mind has learned to stay busy, even when there is nothing left to do. And like any learned behavior, it can be unlearned gently over time. The first step is not to demand rest, but to create safety. The mind rests when it feels safe enough to stop working. Safety does not come from control. It comes from understanding. When you understand that these loops are habits, not threats, the body receives a new message. The breath lengthens, the jaw loosens, the shoulders drop just a little. You might notice a moment when the space between thoughts grows wider. A pause where nothing needs to be solved. In that pause, even if sleep has not arrived yet, something else has. Relief. This relief is not dramatic. It is quiet, like a candle flame no longer flickering in the wind. The flame does not disappear. It simply steadies. This is the beginning of real rest. Not the absence of thought, but the end of struggle with thought. When the loops are no longer fed by fear or resistance, they gradually unwind. The mind learns slowly and patiently that it does not have to carry everything through the night. And in that learning, exhaustion gives way to something softer. Not because life has suddenly become easy, but because the mind has begun to trust that it can lay its burdens down, one breath at a time. And when the inner wheel finally slows, even for a single breath, something extraordinary becomes possible. There is a moment quiet, almost easy to miss when the mind pauses. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with fireworks or certainty. It feels more like a soft gap between two waves, a space where no thought is shouting for attention, a place where the body notices, perhaps for the first time that evening, that it is still lying safely in bed. This moment is small, but it is powerful. You may feel it as a subtle release in the shoulders, as if they have been carrying a heavy coat all day and are finally allowed to shrug it off. The jaw loosens. The breath slips lower into the belly. The heartbeat, which had been tapping insistently against the ribs, finds a slower rhythm. Nothing dramatic changes in the room, and yet, inside something has shifted. In Buddhist teaching, this moment is precious. It is the moment when reaction stops. Karma, as the Buddha explained, is not fate written in stone. It is movement. Action followed by reaction, repeated so often that it feels permanent. A thought arises. The body reacts. Another thought responds to that reaction. The cycle continues. Night after night, the same sequence plays out until exhaustion feels inevitable. But karma only continues while it is being fed. When you stop even briefly, the feeding stops too. Imagine a long train of boxcars moving through the night. Each car pulls the next. As long as the engine keeps running, the train does not question its direction. But if the engine slows even slightly, the entire train feels it. The cars begin to ease their pull on one another. Momentum fades. The mind works the same way. Thoughts pull sensations. Sensations pull emotions. Emotions pull stories. And the stories pull the future into the present. When awareness steps in gently and without force, the engine is no longer being pushed. This is why the Buddha placed such importance on mindful stopping, not as an escape, but as an interruption. A sacred pause. You may have experienced this pause unexpectedly, perhaps while washing your hands and feeling warm water flow over your skin, perhaps while listening to a distant sound at night, a passing train, a wind chime on a neighbor's porch, the soft tick of a clock in another room. For a moment, the mind stops arguing with itself. It listens instead. In that listening, karma loosens its grip. In many Buddhist communities across the United States, teachers often speak about this pause as a doorway. You do not need to walk through it all at once. You only need to notice that it exists. Every time you notice, the doorway becomes easier to find again. Consider a man named Michael living in Northern California. He came to meditation not out of curiosity, but out of desperation. Years of stress had taught his body to stay alert, even in sleep. One night, sitting on the edge of his bed, he remembered a simple instruction he had once heard: just stop for one breath. So he did. He didn't try to fix anything. He didn't try to feel calm. He simply stopped. One breath in, one breath out. In that brief stillness, he noticed how tense his face had been. His brow softened. A quiet warmth spread behind his eyes. The worries didn't disappear, but they stepped back as if giving him room. That was the first night he slept through without waking in panic. What happened in that moment was not magic. It was understanding. The mind realized it did not have to keep pushing. The body received permission to rest. From a Buddhist perspective, this pause is where wisdom begins to replace habit. Habit moves automatically. Wisdom sees and chooses. When you stop reacting even for a moment, you are no longer trapped inside the old loop. You are standing beside it, watching it turn without being pulled in. This is why the Buddha taught that awareness itself is liberating. You do not need to destroy karma. You only need to stop fueling it. When fuel runs out, the fire naturally dims. At night, this practice becomes especially gentle. You may be lying in bed, eyes closed, the room dim. Instead of wrestling with the mind, you simply notice what is happening. A thought appears. You see it. A sensation arises. You feel it. No pushing away. No chasing after. Just knowing. In this knowing, the mind begins to trust the moment. It learns that nothing terrible happens when it stops working. The world does not collapse. Tomorrow does not arrive faster. The body remains safe. Sometimes, in this pause, a faint image may arise. Perhaps the image of a lotus resting on still water. The water does not hold the lotus tightly. It supports it effortlessly. Or perhaps the sound of a temple bell echoes softly in memory, ringing once, then fading into silence. The bell does not cling to its own sound. It allows the echo to pass. These images are not distractions. They are reminders. They point to the natural state of the mind when it is no longer being driven by fear. The Buddha described this state as a return, not a reaching for something new, but a coming back to what has always been there beneath the noise. Stillness is not created. It is revealed. Each time you pause like this, even for a few seconds, something is learned at a deep level. The nervous system learns that it can downshift. The mind learns that vigilance is not required in every moment. Karma, which depends on continuous reaction, loses momentum. This does not mean thoughts will never return. They will, Habit energy is patient, but each pause weakens the habit. Each moment of stopping plants a different seed. Over time, these seeds grow into a new pattern, one that inclines toward rest rather than struggle. The beauty of this teaching is its kindness. You are not asked to become someone else. You are not asked to achieve perfection. You are simply invited to notice the moment you stop. That moment is enough. Because in that moment, the mind steps out of the river and onto the shore. And from the shore, it can finally see how far it has been carried and how gently it can now lay the burden down. This is the quiet miracle the Buddha pointed to. When you stop, karma stops pushing you forward. And in that stillness, rest begins to feel possible again. And when the mind has learned how to pause, it naturally begins to look for a place to rest. In that quiet space, something gentle can enter. Not a command, not an effort, but a sound that feels like being held. This is where the Buddha's name becomes more than a concept. It becomes a cradle for the mind. Many people first encounter the chanting of a Buddha's name through memory. A grandmother humming softly in the evening. A small altar glowing in a corner of the house. A temple bell echoing once, then fading into the night air. Even for those who did not grow up with these sounds, there is something deeply human about repeating a name with reverence. The rhythm steadies the breath. The tone warms the chest. The repetition gives the mind a place to settle. At night, when thoughts scatter easily, the mind longs for a simple anchor. The name of the Buddha offers exactly that. Not as an idea to analyze, but as a sound to return to. When whispered or spoken silently, it moves through the body like a slow tide. Each syllable lands, then dissolves. The next one arrives. Nothing needs to be added. You may notice how the face softens as the sound continues. The lines around the eyes relax. The lips part slightly, as if remembering how to smile without effort. The breath lengthens on its own. With each repetition, the body receives a clear message it is safe to let go. From a Buddhist perspective, this practice works on several levels at once. On the surface, the sound replaces restless thinking. The mind cannot chase worries and hold a single phrase at the same time. As the name is repeated, the inner noise grows quieter, not because it is suppressed, but because it is gently outshined. At a deeper level, the meaning of the Buddha's name begins to touch the heart. It points to compassion without limit, to wisdom that understands suffering, to a presence that does not judge or abandon. When the mind turns toward these qualities, Even unconsciously, fear loosens its grip. The heart feels accompanied rather than alone. There is also a physical rhythm at work. Repeating the name slowly aligns with the natural pace of breathing. Inhale, sound. Exhale, sound. This rhythm tells the nervous system that it can downshift. The body responds with warmth, heaviness, and a growing sense of ease. Sleep often arrives not as a sudden drop, but as a gradual sinking, like settling into warm water. In many Buddhist homes across America, this practice has become a nightly ritual. Not elaborate, not formal. Sometimes it happens while lying in bed, the lights already off. Sometimes while sitting quietly for a few minutes before sleep. The words are simple. The intention is sincere. That is enough. There is a story of a woman named Eleanor, living in Southern California. After years of caring for others, she found herself unable to rest. Her nights were filled with worry, her mornings with exhaustion. A friend suggested she try softly repeating the Buddha's name before sleep. Eleanor hesitated at first. She was unsure. But one night, with the room dim and the house finally quiet, she tried. At first, the sound felt unfamiliar. Her thoughts interrupted constantly, but she kept returning to the name the way one returns to a lullaby remembered from childhood. Gradually, something changed. The tension in her chest eased. Tears came not from sadness, but from relief. She later described it as feeling held by something larger than my fears. That night, she slept. What Eleanor experienced was not belief imposed from outside. It was trust growing from inside. The Buddha taught that when the mind has a wholesome object, it naturally settles. The Buddha's name is such an object. It carries kindness. It carries clarity. It carries the promise that suffering is understood and that peace is possible. This practice does not require perfect pronunciation or deep knowledge. It does not demand faith without experience. It invites you to try and feel for yourself. When repeated with sincerity, the name becomes a gentle companion. It walks with the mind as it releases the day. It stands guard as worries fade. It sings softly until sleep takes over. You may imagine the sound like a candle flame in a still room. The flame does not force darkness away. It simply shines. And in that light, shadows lose their power. The Buddha's name works the same way. It brings light to the inner night, not by fighting it, but by illuminating it. Some nights, the mind may resist. Thoughts may return again and again. That is okay. Each return to the sound is itself an act of kindness. There is no failure here. Only practice. Only patience. Over time, something remarkable happens. The mind begins to associate the sound with safety. The body learns that when the name is present, it can rest. This learning is deep. It reaches places that words and logic cannot touch. This is why the Buddha encouraged remembrance, not as a ritual bound by rules, but as a refuge available in every moment, especially in the moments when the heart feels tired and the mind feels lost. As the name continues, you may notice the edges of the world soften. The room seems farther away. The body feels heavier, more settled into the bed. Thoughts drift more slowly, like clouds at dusk. There is no urgency now, no need to solve anything. The night has become a place of rest rather than struggle. In this way, the Buddha's name becomes a lullaby for the soul, a sound that carries you from wakefulness into peace, not by force, not by effort, but by familiarity, warmth, and trust. And as the mind rests in this gentle rhythm, sleep is no longer something to chase. It is something that arrives quietly and kindly when the heart finally feels at home. As the gentle rhythm of remembrance continues to soothe the mind, another need quietly rises, the need to close the day with kindness rather than judgment. So many nights are made heavy, not by what happened, but by how we replay it. A sentence spoken too sharply, a moment of impatience, something forgotten, something unfinished. The mind gathers these fragments and stacks them one by one until the heart feels crowded and the chest tightens again. The body is ready to rest, yet the mind insists on reviewing the day as if it were a courtroom. But the Buddha never taught us to end the day by putting ourselves on trial. He taught us to end the day by understanding. Imagine sitting at the edge of your bed, the room dim, a single lamp casting a warm circle of light. Outside, the night has settled. Inside, there is a choice. You can rehearse every mistake, or you can look back gently, the way a wise elder looks at a child learning to walk, seeing effort, seeing intention, seeing growth alongside missteps. This is the practice of compassionate reflection. It begins not with questions meant to accuse, but with questions meant to understand. How did today feel in the body? Where did tension arise? When did the heart feel open? When did it close? You might notice the shoulders relax as you ask these questions without urgency. The breath slows. The jaw unclenches. The body senses that no punishment is coming. In Buddhist teaching, reflection is not about creating guilt. It is about creating clarity. When clarity is present, wisdom follows naturally. Without clarity, the mind keeps circling the same regrets, believing that self-criticism will somehow prevent future pain. But criticism only deepens the wound. There is a story shared in a small Buddhist group in New York about a man named Thomas. Each night he replayed his day with harsh precision. He cataloged his shortcomings the way an accountant catalogs losses. Over time, sleep became difficult. One evening, after a long day, he tried something different. Instead of listing what went wrong, he placed a hand on his chest and asked, "What was hard today?" The answer came quietly, "I was tired." That simple acknowledgement changed the tone of the night. His breathing softened. The tightness in his throat eased. He realized that much of his frustration had come not from failure, but from exhaustion. Compassion entered where blame had been. The Buddha taught that intention matters deeply. When you look back on your day, notice the intentions behind your actions. Even when words came out wrong, there was likely a wish to be understood. Even when patience ran thin, there was likely a wish to protect something you cared about. Seeing intention does not excuse harm, but it dissolves cruelty toward yourself. This is where true learning happens. Picture a lotus pond under moonlight. The water reflects both the sky and the mud below. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is rejected. The lotus does not scold the mud for existing. It simply grows upward, nourished by everything beneath it. In the same way, compassionate reflection allows the lessons of the day to rise without drowning you in shame. A gentle way to practice this at night is to walk through the day slowly in your mind, as if you were strolling through a familiar neighborhood. Notice moments of ease, a smile shared, a task completed, a pause that brought relief. Let those moments warm you. Then, notice moments of difficulty without tightening around them. Acknowledge them the way you might acknowledge a cloud passing across the moon. If regret arises, place it in the open palm of awareness rather than clenching it in the fist of self-judgment. You might feel a subtle shift when you do this. The chest opens slightly. The breath deepens. The body recognizes that it is allowed to learn without being hurt. In Buddhist understanding, this practice is a form of purification, not through punishment, but through honesty and kindness combined. When you see clearly and respond gently, the mind releases what it no longer needs to carry into tomorrow. You may even find yourself offering quiet forgiveness to yourself and to others. Forgiveness here is not a declaration or a dramatic gesture. It is a soft exhale, a willingness to put something down, a sense that the night does not need to hold the weight of the entire day. Some people like to end this reflection with a simple inner phrase, something like, "I did the best I could with what I knew today." When spoken sincerely, these words have a calming effect that travels through the body. The face relaxes, the brow smooths, the heart feels less defended. This is not indulgence, it is wisdom. The Buddha understood that the mind cannot rest if it feels threatened from within. When you replace inner attack with inner care, the mind begins to trust itself again. Trust invites rest. Rest invites healing. As the day closes in this way, you may notice the world outside seems quieter too. The hum of distant traffic fades into the background. The room feels softer. The bed feels more supportive. Thoughts still arise, but they no longer demand attention. They pass like leaves floating down a slow-moving stream. Ending the day with compassion changes the quality of sleep. You are not collapsing into rest. You are entering it willingly, without fear of what you might find inside yourself. The night becomes a place of refuge rather than reckoning. This is the Buddha's invitation at the end of each day. Not to be perfect, not to be blameless, but to be honest and kind at the same time. When you close the day this way, you do not carry yesterday's burdens into tomorrow's dawn. You allow learning to remain and suffering to dissolve. The heart feels lighter, the mind feels clearer, and the body, sensing this harmony, finally knows that it is safe to sleep. As the heart softens and the night grows quieter, a natural wish begins to form a wish that this calm does not stay with you alone. Peace, once touched, wants to move. It wants to travel beyond the boundaries of the body and reach the people you love. This is the spirit of dedication, a gentle turning of the heart outward, not as obligation, but as gratitude. You may notice it as a warmth spreading from the chest like a small lamp being lifted and carried into other rooms of the house. Faces appear in the mind's eye, a partner resting in the next room, a child asleep under a blanket, parents far away, perhaps separated by miles, by years, by circumstances that cannot easily be changed. The heart knows where to go. In Buddhist teaching, this moment is precious. It is the moment when calm becomes generosity, when inner peace becomes a gift. Dedication is not about fixing anyone. It is not about taking on their suffering as your own. It is about offering what is wholesome, trusting that goodness shared is never diminished. Like a candle lighting another candle, the flame remains steady, while the room grows brighter. You may sit quietly and feel the breath moving in and out, slow and unforced. With each exhale, imagine the softness you have cultivated flowing outward. It may feel like a gentle wave, barely perceptible, yet sincere. You do not need to visualize anything elaborate. Sincerity is enough. Some people like to begin with those closest to them. A spouse whose shoulders carry unspoken weight. A child navigating a world that feels confusing and loud. You might picture their faces relaxed, their breathing, even their worries set down for the night. Notice how the corners of your own mouth lift slightly when you hold them this way. The body recognizes love immediately. Then the heart may widen further. Parents come to mind. Perhaps they are aging. Perhaps they live nearby. Or perhaps they remain far away. Connected, mostly through phone calls and memory. You may feel a familiar ache when you think of them, a mixture of gratitude and regret, love and distance. Let the ache be there, without tightening around it. Offer them the calm you are holding now, the way you would wrap a shawl around their shoulders on a cold evening. In Buddhist understanding, this act nourishes both sides. When the heart turns toward gratitude and care, it creates wholesome conditions within. The mind rests more deeply. The body feels lighter. At the same time, the intention itself carries power. Not because of superstition, but because intention shapes the quality of consciousness. And consciousness, when oriented toward kindness, has a wide and subtle reach. You may also think of family members who are struggling, someone facing illness, someone weighed down by financial stress, someone caught in anger or confusion. As their image arises, resist the urge to solve or correct. Simply hold them in awareness, bathed in the quiet strength you have cultivated. You might feel your chest expand slightly, as if making room. There is a story shared in a Buddhist center in Texas about a man named Robert who practiced this dedication each night. His relationship with his teenage son had grown tense. Words often came out sharp. Silence filled the spaces between them. One evening, after settling his mind before sleep, Robert gently dedicated his calm to his son. He did not plan a conversation. He did not rehearse an apology. He simply wished for his son to feel safe and understood. Over time, something shifted. Not overnight, not dramatically, but the tone of their interaction softened. Pauses appeared where reactions used to rush in. Robert later realized that the dedication had changed him first. His own heart had become less defended. In that openness, connection found its way back. The Buddha taught that wholesome intentions create wholesome conditions. Dedication is one way those conditions are strengthened. When peace is shared, it multiplies. This practice can also extend beyond immediate family. You may think of ancestors who shaped your life in ways both visible and hidden. Their efforts, sacrifices, and choices ripple forward into the present moment. As you hold them in mind, notice the sense of continuity. You are not alone in this life. You are part of a long stream. You may also include those who have caused you difficulty. This is not easy, and it should never be forced. But if the heart feels ready, even a small wish for their peace can loosen knots inside you. Forgiveness here is not agreement. It is release, a decision not to carry bitterness into the night. From a Buddhist perspective, dedication completes the circle of practice. Calm without generosity can become narrow. Generosity without calm can become draining. Together, they create balance. The heart gives without losing itself. As you rest with this intention, you may notice the room feels different. The air seems softer. The night feels less empty. The body settles more deeply into the bed, as if supported not just by the mattress, but by something larger. Connection, meaning continuity. You do not need special words for this moment. Silence is enough. Feeling is enough. The sincerity of the heart carries the offering where it needs to go. If emotion arises, let it flow gently. Tears may come warm and relieving. A smile may appear unplanned. These are signs that the heart is opening, not breaking. The body understands this language well. As the dedication completes itself, you may sense a quiet return. The energy that moved outward now settles back inside, steadier and more spacious than before. The breath deepens. The muscles soften. The mind feels less alone. This is the gift of sharing peace. It does not leave you empty. It leaves you full in a different way. When you allow calm to move through you and beyond you, the night becomes more than rest. It becomes connection. The day closes not in isolation, but in belonging. And the heart, having offered what it can, is finally free to lay down and sleep. And as this quiet offering completes itself, the night seems to exhale with you. The room feels softer now. The edges of things blur slightly. The weight of the day no longer presses so firmly against the chest. What remains is a gentle heaviness in the body, the kind that comes not from exhaustion, but from release. The shoulders sink into the mattress. The hands rest open. The breath finds its own slow rhythm, moving like a calm tide that no longer needs direction. This is the place the Buddha pointed to again and again, not somewhere far away, not a state that requires effort or achievement, simply the natural peace that appears when grasping loosens and the heart feels safe enough to rest. Tonight, nothing more is required of you. You have seen how restlessness is not a flaw, but a habit shaped by care and responsibility carried for too long. You have noticed how the inner loops lose strength when they are met with awareness rather than resistance. You have felt how a single pause can interrupt old momentum, and how a gentle sound repeated with sincerity can become a cradle for the mind. You have learned to look back on the day without harshness, allowing understanding to replace self-blame. And you have shared what calm you touched, letting it move outward toward those you love. This is a complete practice. The Buddha taught that peace is not built by force. It is uncovered when the causes of tension are understood and released. Each small act of awareness you offered tonight changed the conditions inside. Each breath taken without urgency signaled safety to the body. Each moment of kindness toward yourself softened the mind's defenses. You may notice that thoughts still drift by. That is natural. They no longer need to be pushed away. Let them pass like distant headlights on a quiet road. The mind does not have to follow them. It can remain where it is, resting open, unburdened. If sleep arrives now, let it come gently like a friend pulling up a blanket. If it takes its time, that is also okay. The body is already resting in a deeper way. The nervous system is unwinding. Healing has begun whether or not you are aware of it. In Buddhist understanding, nights like this plant seeds. Seeds of trust. Seeds of ease. Seeds of a different relationship with the mind. You may find that tomorrow feels slightly lighter, or that you pause more easily when stress arises, or that compassion for yourself and others comes a little more naturally. These are signs that the practice is working quietly beneath the surface. You do not need to remember everything from tonight. You do not need to repeat every step perfectly. What matters is the feeling your body now recognizes, the feeling of not having to hold everything alone, the feeling of being allowed to rest as you are. Many people living full lives in America carry an unspoken belief that they must always be alert, always prepared, always productive. The Buddha offered another possibility. A life guided not by constant vigilance, but by wise attention. A heart that knows when to act and when to release. A mind that can work during the day and truly rest at night. This balance is not selfish. It is necessary. When you rest well, you meet life with greater patience. When the mind is calm, the heart responds with more generosity. When you care for yourself with understanding, you create conditions that benefit everyone around you. As you settle into this quiet, you might imagine a single lotus floating on still water beneath a moonlit sky. The water supports it effortlessly. There is no struggle, no effort to stay afloat. Just balance, just presence, just trust. Or you may hear faintly the memory of a bell ringing once in the distance. The sound rises, lingers, then fades into silence. The bell does not cling to its echo. It lets go completely, and the silence that follows is full, not empty. This is the silence you are entering now. If it feels right, you may place one hand over the heart and offer a simple wish, silently or aloud. A wish for rest, a wish for clarity, a wish for gentle strength in the days ahead. There is no right wording. Sincerity carries it. Know that you are not alone on this path. Countless others are learning the same quiet lessons night after night, breath by breath. The Buddha's teachings continue to live because they meet real human needs. Tired minds, caring hearts, lives that ask much of us. Tonight, you have answered those needs with wisdom. May your sleep be deep and nourishing. May your mind be clear and at ease. May your heart carry less weight into tomorrow. And if you find this practice helpful, you may return to it whenever the night feels long. Let it become a familiar place, a gentle refuge you can step into again and again. For now, there is nothing left to do. The day has been released. The night is holding you, and you are free to rest.